Kuzi wants out of Washington?
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen or view of the day. Yes, this podcast is also available in video form, so head on over to YouTube and check it out. My name is Dan Holme. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And I would love to chat one-on-one with you guys about the Capitals. Join me on Subtext. You can find out more in the show description. In this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about how Evgeny Kuznetsov wants out of DC, or at least that is the rumor mill out there, that he is not happy with where he is in the lineup, that he's been playing sometimes on the third pairing, or the third line or the fourth line. And there's rumors out there circulating primarily from the Russian media that he wants out of DC. We'll talk about that in the show. And then despite the fact that the Capitals season isn't going quite according to plan, it is going swimmingly for the Hershey Bears as they have earned a spot in the Calder Cup Playoffs. And then to close out the show, we will talk about the game against the Penguins. But just to get it going here, you'll have to excuse me. I'm dealing with a cold. That's why my voice sounds a little bit off. But Evgeny Kuznetsov, this was in the Trade NHL Talk website they were talking about. As it has become known to Match TV, Washington forward Evgeny Kuznetsov wants to leave the club of his own free will. On Friday, the North American media reported that Washington could trade Kuznetsov in the offseason. However, as it became known to Match TV, Kuznetsov himself has been asking the Caps for an exchange for the second year through his agent previously. The Capital Club was not ready for this. And it is a bit interesting. As we know, Evgeny Kuznetsov has been a bit of a hot and cold player. And, maybe he sees the writing on the walls that this team isn't going in the direction that he wants it to go in. I guess if there's one thing that I thought maybe there would be some ability in him to want to stay on the Caps just because he plays here with fellow Russian countryman Alex Ovechkin. But apparently he is not happy with where he is in the lineup when he's out on the ice. And I can see that. And, some of these guys, when you play in the NHL, you do play with pride, right? And you want to, I think he perceives himself as a number one or number two. And oftentimes he is. So I guess I don't understand where that emanates from. But in any event, it does seem like he is discontent, it suffices to say. Kuznetsov was in the news recently after taking a huge hit for Matt Dumba. He didn't see it coming. Unlike that hit, the Caps have apparently known about Kuznetsov unhappiness for some time, but simply weren't willing or ready to accommodate his trade request. Things may have changed in the regard, as the organization is said to be quite unhappy with the way he's played of late. The Athletic's Tarek Elbashir published the following in a recent Mailbag article. The Caps decision makers are disappointed in Kuznetsov's season. They desperately needed him to step forward, and he did not. He turns 31 in May, counts $7.8 million against the salary cap for 2 seasons after this one, scored no goals in October and won in January, and struggled defensively all year. I don't know where things go from here, but something's got to give. I do like Kuznetsov, but he is a bit of a hot and cold player. It just seems to me that when he first came here, he lit it up. And then, it was a couple seasons ago they were talking about trading him. But Tarek Elbashir said they wouldn't get enough for him if they tried to trade him. So ultimately, if they moved on from Kuznetsov, I would be okay with it as long as it's an upgrade. I don't like to make change for change's sake. But if you could get a better player, maybe bundle them together with some other players, Anthony Mantha, I'm talking to you, then that could really help things out, because we want this team winning. And one of the things that concerns me the most about this team is we know that they're not playing that well out on the ice. So what did they do? They gave new contracts out there to TVR. They gave new contracts to Jensen and Strome and Milano. So it's kind of like, was that the right decision to make? I know that Strome's killed it out there, and, TVR and Jensen, have been playing pretty good, but is pretty good going to cut it? We see what's going on out on the ice. There is no big players missing anymore. John Carlson is back. This is going to be the team ostensibly next year on the ice. Just let that soak in a little bit. How is this team going to get that much better next year? I understand there are some free agents, see Irwin and Connor Sherry, those kind of things. But for the most part, these guys, a lot of them will be back next year unless they make big trades. So if they moved on from someone like Kuznetsov, I would be okay with it as long as they get an upgrade. And I understand that in order to get a marquee name, since there's not a lot of marquee names to trade, or the Caps don't want to trade the nucleus of the team, see Ovechkin and Backstrom and Oshie, those kind of things, that draft picks or prospects, right? So that's the tough thing going forward. But if Kuznetsov does not like it in Washington, then I think that, you don't want him to be a cancer in the locker room and just miserable out there. And ultimately, he has not lived up to potential. I know that there was such high hopes for Kuznetsov. And, for the longest time before he came here, people were saying, oh, when is Kuznetsov going to come? And then when he finally came here, didn't really live up to potential. So that's my take on it, is that if he wants out of Washington, I think they should give him what he wants. If the player and team are both looking to move in a different direction, there should be quite a bit of chatter about Kuznetsov over the summer. While 7.5 mil on his contract isn't chump change, that he's only got 2 seasons remaining is helpful. He's got 53 points in 73 games for the club this season, is coming off a 78-point 21-22 campaign. There will be teams that show interest. Of course they will. He's not a garbage player. Take a look at the players that leave here. Look at Orlov. I mean, look at, he's killing it out in Boston. And then you take a look at like Chandler Stevenson and just all these different players that have gone on to greener pastures and have done pretty well. The question will be whether the Caps can replace him, since the mandate is to ensure they are competitive while Ovi continues to try and break Gretzky's goal-scoring record. Is there a team out there looking to move a center on their own and let the two players try their luck in different environments? Or can the Caps dump Kuznetsov and chase a different center in free agency? I kind of am leaning towards the latter. I think that they need to make changes, because I know that we're in love with a lot of these players on the team, but look at what's going on out on the ice. They are going to miss the playoffs for the first time in a long time. And there's not a lot of pieces that are probably going to move between now and next season unless they're willing to make tough decisions. Kuznetsov does not hold a modified no trade clause, allowing him to submit a 10-team no trade list. Does hold, I should say. So, interesting question for the Caps. Interesting questions for Kuznetsov. Where does he want to go? Ultimately, I think that if a player is unhappy and they're not getting production, move him on somewhere else. I mean, the last couple seasons, he just has not fit the mold of what the Caps were looking for. And if that's the case, then I think they need to move on from him, because, what we're noticing out on the ice this year, and it's funny, all the beat writers, if you listen to Tarek El-Bashir and, Sammy Silver and Samantha Pell at the time and Matt Wyrick, all of them, JJ Regan before he left, they all they saw this coming. They saw that this team was going to be deplorable. And I wouldn't say, deplorable might be a bit of an overstatement, but they're not living up to potential. They are out of it right now. And, when I was listening to John Walton's show, he was saying that if they lose the game against the Penguins, that very well might be the dagger for this year's Caps team. They would have to win, I think, pretty much every game through the rest of the season, and still they would be squeaking their way in it, and it would be most difficult. So tough days lie ahead for the Caps. Tough questions to answer on which direction they go. All right, so after the break here, we will talk about how the Caps are struggling this team, but their AHL affiliate Hershey Bears are killing it. Let's talk about Hershey after the break. Today's episode is brought to you by a product I use literally every day, AG1 by Athletic Greens. Maybe you're like me, you want to be healthy and eat well, but it's always easier said than done. That's no longer the case with AG1. With one delicious scoop of AG1 and a glass of water each day, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging, all of these things. It can be hard and expensive to keep track of multiple different supplements and vitamins, not to mention how hard it is on your stomach. AG1 costs you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with a convenient daily nutritional insurance. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1 year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NHL network to take ownership over your health and pick up on the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Again, you'll have to excuse me. I'm dealing with a bit of a cold right now. That's why my voice is not doing too well right now. So bear with me here. But the Capitals, this season not going according to the script, but Hershey Bears are on fire. They're playing so well. Excitement for me, just of the even the Bears. It is a team that I've followed for quite a few years here, and it's exciting. The AHL affiliate for the Caps just doing really well, and they're no stranger to the Calder Cup playoffs. The Hershey Bears, who are 38-16-5-3, clinched their 70th playoff berth in franchise history with a 4-to-win victory over the Crunch on Saturday night at Upstate Medical University Arena, writes our Sports Central. So that is one of the things that I'll plan on covering for you guys, depending on how well the Caps do towards the rest of the season. I guess here is switch it over to a little bit more Bears coverage. The Bears needed a win of any variety to secure a spot in the 2023 Calder Cup playoffs following Hartford's 4-0 loss to Springfield earlier this evening. With the win, the game marked the earliest date Hershey had clinched a playoff spot since the 09-10 campaign. The victory also extended the point streak for the Bears to 5 games. Hunter Shepard turned in a phenomenal save for the Bears midway through the opening frame, with Simon Reifers drove to the Hershey net, and the Crunch forward's backhand shot created a rebound for Cole Koepke, which Shepard can pin to the goal line with his toe of his pads and keep the game scoreless. Second later, the Bears took the lead there, a 1-0 lead, when Beck Malenstein stole the puck from Sean Day in the left corner and fed the puck to Shane Gersich in the slot, who buried the 6th of the season. Mike Scarbosa collected his 20th of the season for Hershey with an unassisted goal at 5:17. A hit on Julian Naprovic of Syracuse's Daniel Walker prompted a scrap between Walker and Bears captain Dylan McElrath. The Crunch got on the board with a goal from Daniel Walscott at 19:04 when the forward passed from Gabriel Fortier on the front of the net and elevated the puck shoulder over Hunter Shepard to bring the host to within a goal. The Bears restored the 2-goal advantage at 8:09 of the third when Connor McMichael sent a pass from the right side to Gabriel Carlson at the left circle, and the defenseman shot off the right shoulder rebounded to Naprovic, who put home his 4th of the season. Mike Vecchione closed out the scoring with an unassisted empty net goal at 17:56 for his 22nd of the year. Hershey continues the 22-23 season presented by Penn Star Health, and we hope that they're able to continue doing great things. I'm personally really excited about this. I know that, obviously, I would prefer the Caps to be going into the Stanley Cup playoffs, of course, but it just isn't in the cards this year. But Hershey, the good thing that's promising for me is there's a lot of players in Hershey. This Capitals team could be really good in a couple of years here. Maybe, some of them next year, some of them within 2 or 3 years. I just think that the arrow's pointing up for this team. It just might take some time. The one hindrance, I guess I could say, is, the whole agreement with Ovechkin that there shouldn't be any wholesale changes or, tear it down to the studs rebuild while Ovi's here. So a tough thing, but great news for the Capitals, great news for the Hershey Bears. And guys, if you haven't had a chance to go there, go to Hershey. It is a top of the line facility. Walked around, I looked around there with my wife. I'm like, this looks like an NHL arena. It's really top notch. And obviously, it is just one notch down from the NHL, and they bring it every single night. So do yourself a favor. If you haven't been to Hershey, if you're in the DC DMV area, go there. It's not a long trip to take there. and it's a lot of fun. And this team is killing it this year. And this is the future Capitals out there. And all kinds of excitement for me to see those guys playing so well. Some of the names that you've heard around the Hershey Bears and the Washington Capitals organization for quite some time are finally gelling and firing on all cylinders. That's promising for the Bears. That's promising for the Capitals going forward. So greater things lie ahead. Don't be too, disappointed, Caps fans. Ultimately, it's not the outcome we were looking for. We were looking for the playoffs, but the Hershey Bears are headed to the Calder Cup, the baby cap, shall we call them? I don't think they'd like that, but the junior team, should we say, of something like the Capitals? It's the AHL affiliate, which, like I say, Braden Holtby always said it. The line between the NHL and the AHL is razor fine. So it just consider it one step down from the Caps. They're killing it. And I'll have the coverage for you going through the postseason here, and I am most excited about it. All right, so after the break here, we will talk about the game against the Penguins and Anthony Mantha. Anthony Mantha, what do we do with you? We'll talk about him and the game next. Looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories? Then you got to try a Built Bar. We just got through the holidays, and I know my goal is to eat a little healthier this year. If you're like me, where you want to eat healthier but don't want to compromise on taste, then man, I've got the thing for you. You got to try a Built Bar. With Built, healthy is actually tasty. Seriously, they're so delicious you won't think they're good for you. Perfect for your New Year's resolution. So what makes Built Bar so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% chocolate. Yeah, that's right, real chocolate, and they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. And guys, I've spoke to you for the longest time about how you can get Built Bars at built.com, and you still can, but now you can get them at Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today. Walk to the pharmacy section and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream. Those are so delicious. Double chocolate or coconut puffs, or if you're close to Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, my favorite, brownie batter and churro. You can thank me later. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Caps lose to the Penguins. It was one of the games. It was spoke about. John Walton talked about it on his show, saying if the Caps lose that one against the Penguins, it's pretty much done. It's pretty much all she wrote. And one of the things that was a little bit that kind of bummed me out about it is there was a 3-0 deficit. They were down in the third period. It was 3-0, and they found a way to get back into the game. And who was the guy? Who was the Achilles heel that kind of derailed the whole thing? Your friend and mine, Anthony Mantha, a guy who has been in the lineup, who's been out of the lineup, who's been a healthy scratch, who we can't trade to another team even if we wanted to. Anthony Mantha. The good news is we have him for one more year. So that is the frustrating part, that hopefully we can find a way to bundle him together. No one's going to want Anthony Mantha on face value. They're going to need to bundle him together with, maybe a Kuznetsov, or, I hate to say it, maybe some prospects down in Hershey. I'm not the one making the calls. That's Brian McClellan. I'm not really for that, but I could see it happening. Just the nature of the beast and how things go is to get him off the books. But the Capitals and the resurgence, and it was one of the things, and it's a funny thing to say, I was talking about with my wife, I would have almost rather they lost and just lost it, like not even scored a goal, because it's like if someone holds something in front of your face and they snatch it away, that's more frustrating to me than just going, I never even contended for this, and just forget it. Because the Caps did claw. And, the thing about me, and I was talking about this on Twitter, the guy from Locked On Penguins said the nonchalant nature of Anthony Mantha, where he was just going down the ice, and Malkin just stole it like he was just taking it away from, a high school hockey player, and just slammed it home. And that was it. That was it. All that hard work, just that I could read the headlines now in the Washington Post, or, on your favorite blog out there saying the Caps find a way to beat the Penguins. There still is life in this season. Go ahead and crumple that up and throw it in the garbage. It was not meant to be, and it was Anthony Mantha, and I cannot begin to tell you how frustrated I am with Anthony Mantha. And I know anyone can make a mistake, but that was the worst timing in the world. And, I don't want him to feel horrible about himself, but to a certain extent, you are an NHL player, dude. What in the bleep are you doing out there? And that was the tough thing. The Caps generated plenty of chances in 5-on-5 play early, but struggled to get past to Smith, even as they got behind the Pens defense for breakaways and odd man rushes. Caps netminder Darcy Kemper did well to keep the road team in it. He was instrumental in Washington killing 3 of the Penguins' 4 power play chances before finishing the game with 36 saves on 40 shots. So the one thing I don't want to hear, I do not want to hear from anyone out there was this was Darcy Kemper. This was a team that wasn't fully engaged. And it was like, watching the first period, everything was clamped down pretty tight. And then once the Penguins got on the board, it's like the dam broke open. And then all of a sudden there was more scoring for them. And then the Capitals, you got to think that Peter Laviolette in the locker room was giving them the riot act before the second and third period there, or between the second and third period, saying, what are we doing here? Do you guys want to play in the playoffs, or do you want to talk about playing golf in a couple weeks here? So they came out guns a-blazing. Tom Wilson, the leader of this team, and Alex Ovechkin out there, did their level best out there. Ultimately, it wasn't enough as someone like Anthony Mantha derailed their progress. With all 3 goals against him scored off the rush, Kemper often found himself in tough positions, but managed to limit the Pens to 2 scoring chances in 5-on-5, writes NBC Sports Washington. That's one of the things that's, a bit tough. What I was talking about is this is going to be primarily your D-core that's going to be coming back next year. There was a lot of uncertainty, but guess what? Carlson's back. Like that, Rasmus Sandin is back, TVR's back, Jensen's back, Faravari, who was an RFA, will most likely be back. Irwin might not be back, but they're going to need to solidify this blue line with more than what they've got, or they're not going to contend. End of argument. Alexiev has shown flashes of greatness. I do think there's a potential there. Alexiev has really stepped up. So there is players in the pipeline, but Kemper and Lindgren, when he's playing, they can only do so much. After they fell behind 3-0 early in the third, Tom Wilson gave the Caps life with a 4-on-4 tally from the low shot. Evgeny Kuznetsov carried the puck behind the net and found Wilson up front with a wraparound pass to beat DeSmith. It was a pretty sweet goal out there. I'm watching it right now. The Caps climbed their way back into it from there. Ovi scored the 299th power play goal of his career on a one-timer from his office in the left circle before Dylan Strome tied the game with 2:44 left in regulation. And that was the tough thing for me watching this game. I'm like, they're doing it. They're going to do it. Because I'll be honest with you, in the 2018 season, I was filled with all kinds of doubt. Everyone was talking about it at the time. It was JJ Regan and Tarek El-Bashir. They had their podcast going, and they're saying, this is the final, coming up at the end of Columbus here. They're probably not going to make it. They got past Columbus. Tampa, okay, they got lucky getting past Columbus. They made it to Tampa. They beat Tampa. Well, now, okay, you guys got lucky. Now you're playing the Golden Knights, and the Caps found a way to win. And I was negative then, and they found a way to win. And I wanted to tell myself, Dan, you're just being negative. They're going to find a way to win this. But it wasn't the case, as Anthony Mantha is the thorn, the dagger in the Capitals' chest. It looked like the Caps would have a chance to leave the arena with at least 1 point until Malkin took advantage of a turnover by Mantha for the game-winning goal. The loss put 6 points between the Caps and the Pens. With 8 games remaining on Washington's schedule, they'll look to get back in the win column Wednesday when they host the Islanders at Capital One Arena. So I always, oftentimes on this show, I say not impossible, improbable. Well, it is, going between improbable and possible. That line is going, think of it as a gas gauge. It's going over towards impossible real soon here. The Caps would have to hope that the Pens, the Islanders would start losing games. The Panthers would start losing games. Just all these pieces, all the stars would have to line just perfectly for the Caps to make it to the playoffs. And even if they found a way to back into victory, is this team poised to do anything in the playoffs when you see what Boston's doing out there? When you see what, the Rangers and Carolina and the Devils are doing out there? Is there even a shot in the dark? Is there even one, a snowball's chance and of them doing anything? I really don't think it's the case. And it's just not their year. And, Caps fans, we want to believe, we want to drink the Capitals Kool-Aid and think that they're going to do all this and that, but it's not their year this year. And it's unfortunate I was hopeful. You got Kemper here, you got Lindgren here, Connor Brown here, Dylan Strome, mid-season acquisitions of Sonny Milano, Nicholas Abe-Kubel, trade deadline of adding Rasmus Sandin, move out Orlov and Hathaway. The more that goes on, past that, I don't think that was the right thing to do. Ultimately, not my decision to make. They weren't going to be able to come to terms with Orlov. You wanted 7 years deal, Caps 1 and 3. Hathaway wanted to test the market. Subsequently, both those guys are killing it in Boston, just helping that Boston team that was good enough as it was just continue to dominate. Those are the tough things for me going forward, but you got to brush your shoulders off here. You got to look at the Hershey Bears. This is your future here. A lot of those players are going to be on the Caps within the years to come, and we're going to need them to help bolster this team to make it a team that's notable again. Think about when Ovechkin first came to the Capitals and how it revolutionized hockey in DC. That's what this team needs. It needs a hockey infusion. It needs a revival to get this team going again. Because just taking a look at what they have on the ice, and you look at the contracts, and you think to yourself, what's changing between this year and next year? Not a lot. A lot of those contracts were taken care of. There's Sherry out there and there's Irwin. There's not a lot of big ones out there. So if they want to move on from Kuznetsov, let's do it. Let's try to build something that's notable here while we still can. I have hope. I just hope that, things haven't spun too far out of control. But these are all the perils of being in win now mode. That's what happens, and that's why the Caps are in the position that they're in right now. They went all in on this old team. In the game yesterday, they said the Pens are the oldest team. I want to say the Capitals are second, sometimes are first. It just depends on who gets called up and down. But we're hoping for better days for this Caps team. But right now, it's every Caps fan's responsibility to really root, pull, cheer for the Hershey Bears as they are headed for the Calder Cup Playoffs. And I, for one, am most excited about it. And I hope you guys are as well. Thank you for making Locked On Capitals your first listen today. Now make your second listen Locked On Game to Game NHL. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game NHL covers every game from across the NHL with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Locked On Game to Game NHL, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you find your podcast. So once again, thank you guys for joining me all season long on Locked On Capitals. I got you covered all postseason, all off season. We'll talk Caps all summer, because that's what we do here. We're Locked On Capitals. I mean, what else would we do here, right? So when you're using your podcatcher of choice, make sure and hit that follow or subscribe button. When you're done there, head on over to YouTube, hit that subscribe button. We're around 460 subscribers. Let's get it up to 500. And if we do it, I have you guys to thank, and I'm, ever so grateful. So once again, thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.